Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of The Push with Nick and KP. We are here to do a recap of Friday Night SmackDown, which took place on May 23rd, 2025. We start off the match with a Tiffany Stratton promo, who, fresh off her incredible defense against Nia Jax, comes to the ring. She begins to run down her opponents and everyone she's taken out on her climb to the top. She then states that at Money in the Bank, someone will get the opportunity to do exactly what she did a year ago. But before she can kind of continue her full warning to the rest of the roster, Alexa Bliss makes her way down to the ring. She states that cashing in on the Money in the Bank briefcase isn't personal; it's just business. But she too cashed her briefcase in on Nia Jax, and she actually liked Nia. So obviously implying there that Alexa is not a big fan of Tiffany Stratton. And then Charlotte Flair makes her way out to the ring ahead of her qualifier, which when I'm watching her walk down to the ring, I'm thinking, is this kind of written? Does this mean that Charlotte's about to win this match? More on that later. She congratulates Tiffany on her Mania win, which is kind of the first time she's really done that. Every time she's mentioned their match at Mania before today or before the show, it was very much showing a picture of Tiffany saying, "Look, does that look like a winner to you?" Implying that she kind of still got the better of her, even though Tiffany actually did win the match, which doesn't make a ton of logical sense, but here we are. She comes in and congratulates her and then says she's accomplished everything in this business, of course, getting back to herself, Charlotte, except for winning that Money in the Bank briefcase. Tiffany says that Bliss and Charlotte are both still just a little vintage at this point. They had a standard, and Tiffy is the upgrade. I really enjoyed this promo. I thought Tiffany continues. I think she's still a little awkward sometimes, but she's making great strides in the right direction. And for as short a time as she has been there, I think she's making great strides. So with that, as I kind of mentioned, this was Charlotte's qualifier. This qualifier number 4 of 6. This features Charlotte, Julia, and Zelina Vega. Going for that 4th out of 6 women's spot. So for the first part of this match, I felt like Zelina was very much the underdog. She was kind of almost getting overwhelmed by Julia and Charlotte, and she kind of had to fight off both of them. But as the match kind of goes on, everyone kind of gets their own. Felt like everyone had their time to shine, but in the end, WWE shocks us again. Julia gets the win here to qualify for Money in the Bank. And I felt like it was a pretty entertaining match and ended up being a pretty even match. Everyone kind of had their time to shine, and I felt like it was somewhat believable that any one of these women would win. For me, it was just shocking that Charlotte didn't get the win. So take that for what you will. We then get what I assumed was going to be a Motor City Machine Guns versus DIY, but it ends up being a Chris Sabin versus Tommaso Ciampa match. So right off the bat, kind of had myself thinking, what's going on here? What are we doing? But this was a pretty good back and forth. I think in terms of these two guys, clearly, usually being, I know they both have their singles history, but usually being a tag team, I thought they both handled this pretty well for being a singles match. And had no idea who was going to win, but then we get a returning, I believe we could comfortably call this a returning Candice LeRae. I know she's been on Speed, but I think it's been a while since we've seen her on the main roster. But anyway, she comes back, gets the assist, and then Tommaso Ciampa gets the win. I very much assume we'll see some payoff to this, whether that be next week, the other members of DIY and Motor City Machine Guns, or maybe someone to assist them against DIY. But yeah, I thought this was a pretty good match, considering we don't typically see these guys in one-on-one matches. Let's see. Then we get a tag team match between the Secret Service and Michin and B-Fab. This was, I want to say thrown together. They've kind of been building this for a while. But yeah, I felt like this was a good enough match. Of course, Chelsea Green gets involved here, and then in which later we find out this will cause Chelsea and Zelina to have a match at tomorrow's Saturday Night Main Event. But yeah, Chelsea gets involved. She's cut off by Zelina. But then while all this is going on, Micha and BFAB get the win. And I think that was surprising enough. Unfortunately, Secret Service continuing to eat pens doesn't not doing them any favors, that's for sure. But yeah, overall, KP, what are your thoughts on the first half of SmackDown? The opening Tiffany promo, Julia qualifying on her, I think it's the week after she got signed officially. Correct me if I'm wrong there. And then the rest of the match is shown here.
A pretty strong start. I thought the opening segment, Tiff and Alexa and Charlotte, I think that was a pretty nice way to kick things off. Tiffany really does continue to grow and grow and grow, with her presence on the mic. And I think, the more exposure that she has to that, the more time she's given, I think we'll continue to see her blossom and to improve in that regard. I thought the chemistry between her, Alexa, and Charlotte was pretty good, to be fair, especially Alexa being there, just having her presence. But yeah, I think the line of Tiffany calling them vintage was pretty cold, and I think it sort of like gave her a chance to have like a big step up on both of them. So yeah, the women's champion looking strong, holding her own on the mic, and when you've literally got someone like Alexa Bliss and Charlotte Flair standing across from you, I think that's that's quite an important thing to be able to say that you're coming out on that as the top woman from the situation. So yeah, she continues to grow, continues to impress, and the more she does this, the better she'll get with it. So it's great to see, and yeah, good start to the show for sure. I was thinking along the same lines as you. I thought that maybe Charlotte would take this as momentum going into her match and ultimately get a victory. But thankfully, that wasn't the case, and she didn't get the win, obviously, as you glossed over. Julia securing that victory, I think, was a fantastic decision. You're right, by the way, only a week after her signing with Friday Night SmackDown, being on the main roster officially. So, yeah, it's great to see her, being put into that Money in the Bank ladder match straight away. And definitely excited to see how she sort of like gets into that conversation, see how she gets on with it. So it should be really great. But the match itself was decent enough. Zelina being in there to take the pin, I'm pretty damn sure that was the situation anyway. But yeah, I thought it was good and a good way to get Julia started off with a win, and a big win at that as well. The match after that, yeah, Tommaso and Chris, I think they did a pretty good job, to be fair. Obviously we see them so often in tag team competition that singles matches are few and far between. But yeah, Tommaso and Chris looked really good. Besides outside of being with away from the tag team partners, they were at ringside, they were supporting them. But I thought the reintroduction of Candice LeRae was great. It's nice to see them sort of like throwing stuff back to their NXT days, where we would have situations like this more often than not, with Gargano and Candice being next to each other. But yeah, this was a really cool situation. I'm glad to see like a little mini reunion type thing here, and it sort of like bumps another sort of like element to DIY's game, into their arsenal. So yeah, I'm definitely happy to see how this progresses, and yeah, the match itself was fun. It was good. Then yeah, we probably had the lowest part of the night so far. That tag team match was okay. It was fine. It didn't do anything like crazy, but it also didn't sort of like slow anything down, I suppose, when it comes to the story between these 6 women, I guess. But yeah, I guess you mentioned it a moment ago. The Secret Service, taking another loss. Yeah, it doesn't do them any favors. I think they are being made to look like idiots recently, and obviously it's hard to really sort of recover people when you just take loss after loss after loss after loss. I feel like that's just what they've been doing recently for fun. So yeah, I mean, Zelina being the champion, obviously, she needs some momentum on her side, but at the same time, there's just nothing going for the Secret Service anymore, and it's a shame because it was a really fun gimmick at the start. But yeah, Beef and Mishin, I guess a needed win for them, just to sort of like keep them relevant and just keep their names floating around the women's division for sure. But yeah, definitely a decent start at the SmackDown. More so at the start, and going into that Tommaso and Chris Sabin matchup, and then yeah, maybe a little bit of a lull after that, but not too bad for sure.
So I think in terms of the Secret Service, I feel like the top of the women's SmackDown division is great. The mid card needs some work. Tilted Green was the best thing about the mid card, in my opinion, for quite a while, and to have them continually eat these pins, obviously takes away from the momentum. But in terms of just pure wrestling, like they have Alba Fire and Piper Niven too on their team. Like, there's no reason they should be taking this many pens. But yeah, anyways, it is what it is, I guess. Hopefully, they'll turn things around shortly. I feel like Chelsea Green has kind of elevated herself above the mid card title at this point. So we shall see if she gets a shot at moving up the division there. A few other things going on here tonight. One of which we see um, Damian Priest can make his way down to the ring. But before he does that, Drew attacks him, and we see earlier in the night, even like the beginning of the show, we see introductions of who's going to be in action that night. Um, Damian attacks Drew there. So clearly, these guys are ready for their bout at Saturday Night Main Event. But really, nothing else comes of that. We just see a bunch of brawling throughout the night, and officials have to separate them as well. One other thing we saw, actually, a couple other segments we saw throughout the night. Alexa Bliss is seen in the back talking to, I think Charlotte thought she was talking to her. She basically says that's why it helps to have friends. Charlotte kind of says, "Excuse me," and she finds out that she's talking to her Lily. And Alexa tells Charlotte that, don't worry about it. I'll see you at Money in the Bank. And then she quickly realizes she didn't qualify for it. So she says, "Oh, sorry again." Quickly playing against each other. We thought maybe they would have a alliance there, but quickly putting that to rest. We also see I guess we'll call this a Worlds Collide promo, where we see Santos Escobar at what appears to be his residence with Angel and Berto. Clearly, the same story we've been seeing, though. Berto is not buying anything Santos is selling. He walks off. Santos is still confident somehow. I have no idea how, but maybe he's delusional. But then Angel kind of says, he'll realize soon enough. So more of the same there, but at least that's kind of, I think that's the first time we've seen a match announced and mentioned of Worlds Collide outside of just saying that that will appear on the same day as Money in the Bank. So looking forward to that, though. It should be fun. And then into the next match we see of the evening. And but before we do, early in the night, we see Jacob back in the back with Solo and JC. Jacob kind of reminds them he didn't need their help at Backlash, and to be honest, he doesn't really trust either of them. So yeah, that kind of is what it is. More of the same there. Apparently, their match, Ray and Big Jim Uso, is later here tonight, and we'll try to. The point of this, Solo says, is try to convince Jim to come back to the Bloodline, and we kind of see this mentioned throughout the match several times. Him mending his hands together, Solo, to try to get him to come back. We'll see if that obviously didn't work. We see the match here. I thought this was a really good match. A surprising amount of chemistry for me, anyways, for Jimmy Uso and Ray Phoenix. I know they're both tag team competitors by definition. But still, I thought this was a really fun watch, really good match, really competitive. Jimmy and Ray, I thought, got a surprising amount of offense, considering who they're going up against, and Jacob, who's running things right now, and JC, who just kind of debuted. Of course, as the numbers game gets involved here, Solo and Jacob causing enough distraction to allow JC to get in a tour of the islands to get the win over Big Gem. I'm glad that Ray Phoenix didn't take another pin here. Noted, though, I think the tour of the islands, provided how big JC is, I think that's a bit of a weak finisher. I think at the very least he could make it, I don't know, maybe put more of his weight on him as the finish. Maybe that would help a little bit. We then get a R-Truth promo who comes down to the ring. He basically says everything he's already said before. He doesn't recognize Cena, but he's going to beat the hustle, loyalty, and respect back into him. He makes a comparison. If you're a fan of Lord of the Rings, you'll appreciate that. He makes a comparison that John's like Gollum, and that the power, or the precious in this case, is changing who he is. So I thought that was enjoyable. Crowd didn't pop like they should for this. This was funny and this was entertaining, albeit nothing out of the ordinary for him in terms of what he's been saying. But even still, he's so entertaining in the ring in any aspect. So we then get a Money in the Bank qualifier on the men's side, the second of the six. But before that, LA Knight cuts his promo, and what I will say is an absolute incredible promo. He's saying that Shinsuke and Alistair are living spooky season year round. LA announces that it's championship season though, and that he will take care of them and remind them that this evening. This was a really good match as well. Entertaining contest. Every time it felt like one of the guys had the upper hand. The one who wasn't in the ring at the time, they typically do with triple threats, Kate would come back into the ring, break it up, and we would get going again. But yeah, this was a really good contest. Aleister Black gets the black mass on Shinsuke. LA Knight times it, kind of just how I mentioned, comes back in the ring, tosses out Aleister, and then gets the 1-2-3 to qualify for Money in the Bank. I don't think LA Knight needed this, but I wouldn't be mad. I wasn't going to be mad at anyone winning. Out of the three, I'm not sure LA needed this to at this time. But regardless, qualifies, and we'll see where he takes it from here. We then get the main event, which features Fraxium and Street Profits. Fraxium's been rolling, haven't been beat so far, and they get the chance at the WWE Tag Team Championships from the Street Profits. Again, third match in a row. Very good, very entertaining. This was by far the best match, though, and I think that's a testament to how good this one was. Just absolutely stole the show, as both the teams involved here have been doing. Fraxium proving they belong. I think the Street Profits do a great job of showing, pushing Fraxium, making sure everyone knows that they should be here. Each team completely believable as a winner throughout the entire match. And as I kind of mentioned previous matches, there wasn't a bad winner here, but a couple of these 3 counts had me at the edge of my seat. This was a great contest. As we typically see with this division, we see DIY make their way down to the ring, but at least we got a good match before. I think that's one of my issues. If we're gonna have interference, at least make sure we get a good match before, and we did. But DIY is cut up by MCMG, and then Montez takes them all out, and then comes back to the ring. Appears to be going up for a frog splash to get the win for the Street Profits, and the lights go out. When the lights come back on, we see the returning of the Wyatt Six. They've been gone for quite a while and had their injuries and whatnot. We see them come back, and they clearly that's the takeaway here. Great match, great return, and a great way to end SmackDown. KP, I know I rambled a lot here, but this SmackDown had a ton of action, and especially this last half. What are your thoughts on the matches we got here and the return? Yeah, the return here, it's huge. Great way to end SmackDown.
Yeah, there's a lot to discuss here. The tag team match, JC Mateo and Jacob Fatu, Jimmy Uso and Rey Fenix, I think was a nice little way of getting JC Mateo to continue sort of his introduction to WWE. Thought he matched with Jacob Fatu relatively well, and decently enough to obviously get the victory here as well. It was a decent enough tag match. I'm not going to really go too much in detail about it because it was, it did what it needed to do, showcase these guys that needed showcasing, and just move things along steadily here. So, correct result. You're not going to have JC Mateo come in and take a loss so soon, and especially with someone like Jacob Fatu, in his, as a tag team partner, he needs to keep momentum going as well. So, ultimately a correct decision here, and not a bad tag team match at all. The Money in the Bank qualifier was interesting because I went into this one not really knowing who exactly was going to win. I had a feeling Knight would get the victory in the end, but him and Black, I feel like were definitely 2 options where I think they could have quite easily gone down that route. I feel like Knight is the sensible call based on how popular he is still. Obviously, with Black coming back in, he's popular. Like, he's got a lot of interest on him, but I think it's very, very early to maybe shoot him straight into that position right now. Whereas someone like LA Knight, I think ultimately does deserve, another chance at, walking away with the Money in the Bank briefcase based on his reaction last year and how disappointed a lot of people were when he didn't win that. So I think it's a good call, it's a safe call, and yeah, don't have any problems with that one. But it was a fun triple threat. I enjoyed it. I think all three men really put in a good shift here, and yeah, they gelled really well. I thought it was a good watch. The tag team match to end the show. Yeah, this was interesting. I think the match itself was great. I think, when you had Fraxium and the Street Profits, competing for the tag titles, it's always going to be a good one. You got the fast-paced Fraxium, and you got the hard-hitting and very, very impressive Street Profits as well. I think it's always going to be a recipe for success. And that's what they were delivering. It was a really good matchup. It was very, very interesting to see how it's going to take place and go down. And then you had obviously all the interference with the likes of DIY coming on down and everything that happened during that. And then you had the Wyatt Six, which was very confusing to me. I think don't get me wrong, it's great to have them back, and I think that it was quite a shocking return. Didn't expect it whatsoever. But I think what confuses me here is we had them away for so long, and the last thing that we saw about them was that they were going after people who had betrayed, friends, family, whatever. Like, had basically done something that, in their eyes, was deemed unloyal. So now we've got the Wyatt Six coming down here, and for seemingly no reason, taking out the entirety of the SmackDown Tag Team division in terms of the main event picture. And we're just expected to enjoy it because it's the Wyatt Six. I personally didn't rate this ending. I didn't like it. I think that maybe in a couple of weeks' time, if we get an explanation and we understand why exactly they've done this, we see their motives, maybe then I could change my mind. But I think right now, without the lack of information and with no real sort of guidance as to explain why they've done what they've done, it to me just seems like a really weird and strange decision. So yeah, maybe a bit of a hot take there, but I'll give them a pass if they can sort of in the next couple of weeks explain why exactly they've done what they've done. But right now, it just seems like a very strange call and makes no sense. It seems almost as if like they just brought them back in the main event just to pay homage to Bray Wyatt, which is a lovely thing to do. I'm not going to say it's a bad thing at all, but I feel like that's the main takeaway here from this segment because they put them at the end in order to pay homage to Bray on his birthday. And again, that's not a bad thing. It's just that's the only thing I can explain as to why they've done what they've done right now based on what we've got in front of us. But yeah, I think that they ruined a tag team match, which was very, very good. And I would have loved to have seen, the finish, gone to one of those two teams. And if it's a matter of protecting those teams for now, then why give them the title match in the first place? So yeah, I don't know. It's a bit of a strange one, but I'm interested to see how they go from here. That's my main take. SmackDown was good though. I think that there were a lot of good parts about it. Some definite pluses and pros. As to the downsides, there weren't that many of them. There were only a couple of little bits here and there, and then maybe my own personal sort of like things from there. But I thought it was a good show. I thought it was quite solid for the majority, and the Money in the Bank build continues to build along quite nicely here. So I gave it a 7.5 out of 10. I thought it was a good show, and yeah, I'm definitely keen to see more of the same going forward, and definitely an explanation for the Wyatt Six. That's my main sort of takeaway from this one, as to what exactly they've done and why they've done it. But what about you, Nick? What did you think in terms of the show as a whole, and how excited are you going forward into Money in the Bank, which is coming up very, very soon?
Yeah, 2 weeks out. Can't wait. I didn't have an issue with the Wyatt Six, and maybe it's just because I hadn't put much thought into it. For me, I kind of just say, "Hey, they're back." I am not huge. I in terms of what they've done since they've come back and been. I think they had a great debut when they first joined, or first were created. I love the introduction, but ever since then, it's been a lot of like the hype for me has long left the station. So bringing them back, I think I just thought it was a great moment for what it was. As you kind of alluded to, I haven't really thought why are they here, why are they back. I just kind of assumed that they will tell us that. But if this is the case and that they're actually going after the tag team titles, you make a good point. Maybe they just changed their motive overall as a faction, in which that case, I personally think that'd be for the better because typically at least for me, the huge long payoffs when it comes to them hasn't panned out so far. So we'll see what they do with that, I guess. But I'll say that if you are putting them in the tag division, which is already completely stacked. Um, we need a draft soon because SmackDown has all the tag teams and Raw has a couple, I think a few. Definitely need a draft if that is going to be the case. But I think that's the right choice for them. I think um, starting them off with something and then kind of going from there. It's just Wyatt Six are just an extremely hard team to deal with in terms of their uh, mysterious persona. Um, I think for me personally, I would really struggle with how much I want to feature them in ring because I think that does kind of take away from them if they are only being an in-ring competitor. I think they need to be more of the drama and the storytelling for me personally. But yeah, I'm nitpicking here. I think overall, I think the return was great, and I thought the SmackDown was great as well. I think this is probably one of the best SmackDowns we've had since Mania, if maybe not the best for me. I really enjoyed basically beginning to end for me. I quite enjoyed myself. I gave this one a 9.5 out of 10. So a little different from you. We don't often very much, but yeah, I really enjoyed this one. So with that, this has been the SmackDown recap, and we have battleground predictions in a couple of days, and then or reactions, excuse me, and then we have Raw, NXT, and SmackDown the next week. So, and just like that, we are 2 weeks away from Money in the Bank as well. So, looking forward to all that. And until next time, this has been the Push with Nick and KP, and we'll see you soon. Take care.